He's not going to let you out of that ring alive.
I can beat him.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars and welcome to my review for the 1989 classic Jean-Claude Van Damme film Kickboxer. The film is co-directed by Mark Disali and David Worth, who also co-wrote the film, Mark Disali, with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and it stars, of course, Jean-Claude Van Damme, as well as Dennis Alexio, Dennis Chan, Michael Quizzi, Haskell Anderson III. And this focuses on two Sloan brothers. We've got Kurt Sloan, played by Jean-Claude Van Damme, and Eric Sloan, played by Dennis Alexio, who was in actual fact a real-life kickboxing world champion. And they end up... The brother, Eric Sloan, is a champion in the film, champion kickboxer. He's taken on all opponents. He is recommended to go to Thailand because that's where the best kickboxers are, Muay Thai fighters are. So he decides to go over to Thailand and take on their greatest champion, Tong Po. However, this doesn't go well. Tong Po is a vicious fighter who ends up crippling Eric, and Jean-Claude Van Damme swears revenge and goes to a local trainer, Xian, to learn the art of kickboxing and Muay Thai in order to take his revenge on Tong Po and fight him. Right, what are my thoughts on Kickboxer? Well, I'm really enjoying it at the minute, doing some classic 80s and 90s action reviews with some of the top action stars of the genre and the era. Chuck Norris, Steven Seagal I've done some of, and now I'm going to start doing some of Jean-Claude Van Damme as well as the others. So we're going to kind of mix it between the three and probably throw in a few others from Arnie here and there, and maybe a few Stallones here and there, and maybe a few Dolph Lundgren ones as well here and there. I'm really enjoying doing them, and I'm really enjoying revisiting many of them to watch, because some of them I haven't watched for many, many years. Now, Kickboxer was one of my favourite and mainstay martial arts films from the era. It's a film I had on VHS at the time, and I absolutely loved it. You know what I mean? It's one of those films that I could sometimes watch once a week almost. It was just so much fun to watch this film. Many of the Van Damme ones. I mean, I loved them all at that era. I loved Norris, Seagal, Van Damme. I mean, they were just absolutely fabulous and completely owned the genre in regards to lower budget action films. And at the time, really, when Van Damme came out, I remember there was nobody like him, really. I mean, some of the kicks he were doing were just extraordinary. You know, some of the martial arts he was doing, and the camera absolutely loved him. And yes, in his earlier films, and you could argue even now, but he has improved. Some of his earlier films, his acting is pretty bad. But you also got to remember as well that English was his second language, and that massively came across in his earlier films because he obviously struggled quite badly with his English at that time. But Kickboxer to me was just absolutely fantastic. It's a simple story. It's a simple revenge story, but it's told so well. And I think it's just so watchable, this film, for many, many reasons. I mean, number one, the martial arts are fantastic in this film. I mean, really spectacular. And it was Van Damme that choreographed much of this film in regards to the martial arts. In fact, I think he did all of it. And that just speaks volumes now. You could argue that it was done to make him look better on screen. But I thought, Dennis Alexio, when you see him doing it at the beginning, was, giving his moment to shine. Michael Quizzi, I never know how to pronounce that, but I'll say Quizzi, who played Tong Po. I mean, he came across as a vicious opponent, a very, very credible antagonist for the film. Really, really credible, and one of the strongest villains, I think, in any Van Damme film. And the fight between him and Tong Po at the end, ultimately quite predictable, it was very, very exciting to watch. Very tense, and some stunning martial arts in regards to the final fight and stuff like that. You even get a little bit of a romance going on in the film. You get some really cringe and now legendary scene of Van Damme doing that terrible dancing when when Xian wants to see how he fights, like under the influence of alcohol and this kind of stuff. I mean, it's hilarious and it's very difficult to watch, but it's just so part of the film now. That scene and other scenes, things like that. The training scenes are done really, really well. I mean, training scenes in martial art films are the bread and butter of many of those films, and they're done so well here as well. They make use of his flexibility, Van Damme, the stretching of the legs and all this kind of stuff. And it's a lot of fun, and it's a fast-paced film as well, in the sense of there's always something interesting to watch. I think the cinematography at times is really, really beautiful. Some of the silhouette shots of him training, in the ruins and things like that, they all look really, really fantastic. And I just think I think a lot of people then, and maybe now, dismiss these sort of films as just, martial arts, fair sort of thing, run-of-the-mill type stuff, and I think people dismiss it. There's some really, really high quality stuff going on in this film, and many others of Van Damme's of this era. I just made them so watchable. I think sometimes these days, I think people overly complicate plots and stories, and I just think one of the real strengths of this is its simple story. And it's underdog type story, you know what I mean? And it's interesting as well how Michael Queasy, who became like a very good friend to Van Damme in real life, they were very good friends for many years. I think they may still be friends. He was actually a choreographer, and I think he was, I don't know what he did, it was something else he was doing, and he overheard that they were looking for, a credible villain for this film who knew Muay Thai and all this kind of stuff, and he put himself forward to be used. But because he was from Morocco, makeup was used to kind of make him look a little bit more Asian. But it almost, the way they made the makeup work on Tong Po, it looked like his face was melting almost. I mean, it was bad makeup, but it worked because it made him look even more menacing. And that scene at the beginning when Van Damme goes in his changing rooms and sees him kneeing the metal post, the concrete post with his knee and shaking it. I mean, you just like, hang on, let me get straight on back on that plane. So it made him a very, very credible villain. It was wonderful, and he returned as well for the second film, Kickboxer 2. Obviously, Van Damme didn't come back for that, but that I always enjoyed that one as a second one. It may be a film I'll revisit at some point in the future as well. I haven't seen it for a long, long time. And obviously they did remake this film a few years ago because it was Dave Bautista, believe it or not, played Tong Po in the remake. Van Damme came back, he was like the trainer in the sequel. And it was one of the first films I reviewed on this channel many, many years ago, 5 years ago, something like that. Kickboxer Vengeance, was it called? It was a decent enough remake, but in my opinion, it didn't come close to the original, because I just think it's quite a special film, this one. It's one of Van Damme's finest, that's for sure. So yeah, and interestingly as well, because I've been doing a lot of Chuck Norris reviews recently, apparently Chuck Norris was initially approached to star in this film and be, the Van Damme character, which I'm not sure would have worked. He'd have probably been too old. It might have been better if he'd have played the brother, the Eric Sloan character, but I don't imagine he would have agreed to that being made a cripple in a film. But that's interesting that certainly Chuck Norris was approached. So yeah, a brilliant Van Damme film, one of my favourites. Let me know in the comments what you think of Kickboxer. Let me know in the comments which Van Damme films you would like me to review next. And of course, don't forget to join me back on the channel for plenty more reviews and content very, very soon.